Imagine waking up from a heavy nap and realizing your entire team left the planet without you. You look out the small round window of your habitat module and notice the landing pad is completely empty. The crew vehicle is gone. Your crewmates packed up the entire operation and pulled out of the driveway while you were sleeping. They did not leave a note on the fridge. They did not leave a spare set of keys under the mat. They just launched themselves back into space and left you alone on a giant red ball of dust that is currently 40 million miles away from the nearest open Starbucks. At first, you assume it must be a hilarious prank for a reality television show. But then you look at the life support telemetry screen and realize your team left you behind because you were probably the guy who did not chip in for the group pizza order on the launch pad. Then, the local weather forecast on Mars is remarkably consistent. The atmosphere is 95% carbon dioxide. The average surface temperature sits at a comfortable minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit. If you decide to step outside without your multi-million-dollar spacesuit to clear your head, the atmospheric pressure is less than 1% of Earth's baseline. This means the physical boiling point of water drops below the actual temperature of your own blood. If you open your mouth on the Martian surface, the moisture on your tongue and inside your lungs will instantly begin to boil, which is certainly one way to save a lot of money on mouthwash. You are now the single most isolated human being in the history of the species. The closest living person is currently sitting in a space station orbiting a completely different planet. Your only companion is a mechanical carbon dioxide scrubber that sounds exactly like a broken refrigerator from the 1990s. If that little machine stops humming, you will fall asleep in about 10 minutes and never wake up again. So you pull up a chair, sit down in front of the console, and decide to call customer service back on Earth. The physics of talking to home is where the true comedy of your new lifestyle begins. Radio signals travel at the absolute speed of light, which sounds incredibly fast until you remember how big space actually is, depending on where Mars and Earth are in their cosmic dance around the sun. A single message takes anywhere from 4 to 24 minutes to cross the void. That means if you press the button and say a quick hello to ground control, your voice has to travel through millions of miles of empty blackness before anyone hears it. Then the engineers at NASA have to listen to it, think about a response, and send it back. The round-trip time for a single conversation is 48 minutes. Imagine trying to text your ex that you are literally dying on another planet and having to wait 48 minutes just to see if you are still blocked. You send a highly detailed, panic-stricken audio log explaining that the main airlock is leaking and you are running out of mac and cheese. Then you sit there in the silence of your habitat for nearly an hour. You stare at the blinking green light on the console. You watch the dust motes float through the artificial air. 48 minutes later, the speaker crackles to life with a pre-recorded message from a low-level administrative assistant. The voice tells you that your request has been logged and that someone from HR will get back to you by the end of the fiscal quarter. But they also remind you that your student loan payment is due on the 1st of the month. This communication delay completely ruins the dramatic pacing of your survival story. In the movies, the stranded astronaut has a witty, fast-paced banter with the geniuses in the control room. In reality, you spend most of your day sitting on an upside-down plastic bucket, waiting for a 30-second audio file to download over a connection that makes dial-up internet from the late 90s look like fiber optic broadband. You cannot even pass the time by scrolling through social media because the bandwidth is reserved for critical life support data. If you try to load a single cat video from Earth, the entire habitat's life support system will probably crash too. Prioritize a 6-second clip of a tabby knocking over a glass of water. So you give up on human connection and decide to check your local power grid. The habitat relies entirely on a massive array of solar panels spread across the red dirt outside. Solar power is an excellent choice on Earth where things are generally clean and the weather is managed by a functioning ecosystem. On Mars, the entire planet is covered in a fine, powdery dust that has the exact physical consistency of powdered sugar, but is highly abrasive and slightly toxic. Every single day, a light breeze deposits a fresh layer of this red flour over your expensive solar panels. If the panels get covered, your batteries do not charge. If your batteries do not charge, your heaters turn off at night. If your heaters turn off at night, you become a permanent human popsicle before the sun comes up. This means your primary job as the pioneer of interplanetary colonization is to put on a 200-pound spacesuit, walk outside with a glorified broom, and sweep the floor. You are a highly trained scientist with multiple advanced degrees from prestigious institutions, and your main contribution to the space age is acting as a lonely janitor for a giant mirror in the middle of a desert. It gets significantly worse when the local weather decides to throw a tantrum. Martian dust storms are not like the storms we have on Earth, because the air is so thin. The wind cannot actually knock you over even if it is blowing at 60 miles per hour. But the dust particles are so small that they get kicked up into the upper atmosphere and stay there for months at a time. In 2018, a single global dust storm grew so massive that it completely wrapped around the entire planet and blotted out the sun for nearly a quarter of a year. It completely starved the solar arrays of the Opportunity rover, cutting off its energy supply and leaving it to freeze to death in the dark. The rover's final message to Earth was a heartbreaking note, explaining that its battery was low and it was getting dark, which is exactly the same text I send my friends when I want to leave a party early. If a global storm hits your position, you cannot sweep the panels anymore. There is no sun to find under the clouds. You just have to sit inside your small metal box, listening to the static electricity hiss against the hull, and hope your backup nuclear generator does not decide to quit its job. The nuclear generator runs on plutonium-238, which decays naturally and produces heat that converts into electricity. It is sitting in a small, heavily shielded cylinder a few hundred yards from your front door. It is the only reason you are warm. You start looking at that small cylinder of radioactive material with a strange sense of affection. You begin talking to it during your evening meals. You name it after your childhood pet because it is currently the only thing in the universe keeping your toes from snapping off like frozen twigs. Eventually, the freeze-dried meals packed by NASA are going to run out. The space agency designed your rations to last for exactly 90 days, assuming a crew of 6 people would be eating them. Since your crewmates abandon you like a bad habit, you actually have enough food to last for several months if you ration it properly. But eating the same pasteurized beef stew out of a silver foil pouch every single day will do terrible things to your sanity. You start reading the back of the ingredient labels just to feel something. You find yourself daydreaming about the texture of a mediocre crunchy taco from a late-night drive-through window. You would give up your entire retirement account just to smell a single piece of fresh garlic. So you look at the empty science lab. You look at the bags of raw Martian dirt you brought inside for experiments, and you decide to channel your inner Hollywood survival specialist. You decide to grow your own food in the local soil. This is the exact moment where the reality of planetary science completely ruins the plot of your favorite science fiction movies. In the movies, the main character just mixes some Martian dirt with a little bit of human waste, plants some leftover grocery store potatoes, and suddenly has a thriving indoor garden. In the real world, Martian soil is not actually soil at all. It is regolith, which is just a fancy scientific word for crushed rock that has been pulverized by asteroid impacts over 4 billion years. It contains absolutely zero organic matter, no nutrients, and no helpful bacteria. But the real deal breaker is that Martian regolith is heavily saturated with chemical compounds called perchlorates. Perchlorates are toxic salts made of chlorine and oxygen that are commonly used on Earth to manufacture rocket fuel and fireworks. The ground you are standing on is literally laced with industrial-grade poison. If you try to grow crops in raw Martian dirt, the plants will absorb these toxic salts directly into their tissues. If you then eat those crops, The perchlorates will enter your body and completely shut down your thyroid gland. Your thyroid is the master control switch for your metabolism, your body temperature, and your heart rate. So if you try to replicate the potato survival strategy from Hollywood, you will not become an inspiring hero of human ingenuity. You will just become a very sick person with a failed endocrine system who spent 6 months eating terrible potatoes that taste like fireworks and human fertilizer to make the dirt safe for agriculture. You would need to build an industrial water filtration system to wash the salts out of the rocks over hundreds of cycles. You would need to chemically treat every single pound of dirt to neutralize the chlorine compounds. You would need to spend hours mixing your own biological waste into the sterile dust, turning your pristine science laboratory into something that smells like a poorly maintained festival toilet. And even if you succeed, you are still just a guy sitting alone in a plastic tent, eating a soggy potato that has a 95% chance of giving you chronic thyroid disease. While you are managing your terrible farm, your own body is quietly plotting its own retirement from active service. Human beings evolved under the constant heavy pull of Earth's gravity. Our muscles, bones, and cardiovascular systems are all designed to fight against that weight every single second of the day. Mars is a much smaller planet, which means it only has about 38% of Earth's surface gravity. When you first land, this feels absolutely incredible. You weigh less than half of what you did back home. You can hop around the habitat like an Olympic athlete without even trying. You can lift heavy equipment crates with one hand like a superhero. It feels like the ultimate cosmic gym membership, where get all the strength benefits with none of the actual effort. But your body is incredibly lazy from an evolutionary perspective. If your bones do not need to support 180 pounds of weight every day, your brain decides that keeping those bones strong is a massive waste of resources. Your skeletal system begins to reabsorb its own calcium and flush it out through your urine. You are actively urinating your own skeleton into the habitat's water recycling system. Your bone density drops by about 1% every single month you spend in low gravity. Within a year, your femur will have the structural integrity of a piece of dry drywall. Your muscles undergo a similar process of rapid downsizing because they no longer have to lift heavy limbs. Your heart, which is just a big muscle that pumps blood against gravity, realizes it does not have to work nearly as hard to get blood up to your brain. So your heart muscle actually shrinks and becomes smaller over time to prevent your body from turning into a sack of loose jelly. NASA requires you to exercise for at least 2 hours every single day using specialized resistance machines. These machines use heavy rubber bands and pistons to simulate the weight of Earth. So you spend 2 hours a day strapped into a harness, sweating profusely inside a sealed room, fighting a losing battle against your own biology while staring at a blank metal wall. If you skip your workout for a week because you are feeling depressed about being abandoned on a desert planet, your knees will feel like old crackers the next time you try to stand up. And the gravity is not even the most dangerous invisible thing in the room. Back on Earth, we are protected by a massive, churning magnetic field generated by our planet's molten iron core. This magnetic field acts as a giant invisible shield that deflects the constant stream of high-energy radiation flying out from the sun and deep space. Mars does not have a global magnetic field anymore. Its core cooled down and solidified billions of years ago, turning off the shield permanently. The Martian atmosphere is also too thin to block anything meaningful. This means the surface of Mars is constantly being pelted by solar particles and cosmic rays that can easily slice through human cells like microscopic bullets. When you walk outside to sweep your solar panels, you are standing in a silent, invisible storm of radiation. The cosmic rays pass straight through your suit, straight through your skin, and smash directly into your strands of DNA. Inside your cells, the delicate instructions for how to replicate safely are being systematically scrambled by particles that were shot out of an exploding star millions of years ago. Spending a year on the surface of Mars gives you a radiation dose that is roughly equivalent to receiving hundreds of chest x-rays every single week. You are essentially living inside a giant, low-power microwave oven that is very slowly cooking your genetic code from the inside out. The habitat modules have extra shielding made of heavy water bladders and thick layers of dirt piled on the roof to keep you safe while you sleep. But every minute you spend working outside or looking through the window increases your lifetime risk of developing terminal illness. You start to view the great outdoors not as a frontier of human exploration, but as a hostile radioactive soup that wants to rearrange your molecular structure because it can. You find yourself spending more and more time in the center of the habitat, huddled in the small windowless bunk space where the shielding is thickest. You sit there in the dark, listening to your own heart beat, wondering if that slight itch in your shoulder is just a muscle strain or a cosmic ray rewriting your genetic code. The psychological toll of this routine is where the true survival horror sets in. Human brains are hardwired for sensory variety. We need to see different colors, hear different frequencies, and feel different textures to keep our cognitive gears running smoothly. On Mars, your entire visual world consists of exactly 2 colors. Inside the habitat, everything is industrial white, sterile gray, or metallic silver. Outside the window, everything is a monotonous, unchanging shade of rusty orange. There are no trees. There are no clouds that look like animals. There is no blue sky. The sky on Mars is a pale, sickly butterscotch color during the day, turning a weird, chilly shade of blue right at sunset because of how the fine dust scatters the light. There are absolutely no sounds from the natural world. There is no rustle of leaves in the wind because the air is too thin to make trees move. Even if there were any trees to begin with, there is no sound of running water or rain hitting the roof. The only noise you hear for months on end is the mechanical drone of the environmental control system and the sound of your own breathing inside your helmet. It is the sensory equivalent of being locked inside an abandoned dental clinic for a year. You start to develop a deep, visceral hatred for the color orange. You find yourself staring at the small green indicator lights on the control panel just to look at a color that reminds you of grass. You spend hours listening to old audio files of rainstorms that you downloaded before the mission, trying to trick your brain into believing that your skin is wet. Your mind starts to play tricks on you in the absolute quiet. You will swear you heard a door click open at the end of the hallway, even though you know for an absolute fact that you are the only living thing within a 50 million mile radius. You start talking to the habitat's computer system, hoping it will suddenly develop a sassy artificial intelligence personality, like the ones in sci-fi movies. But the computer is just a collection of dumb circuits running basic logic gates. When you ask it how it is feeling today, it just prints a technical error log explaining that the wastewater recycling pump needs a new seal. The true turning point of your isolation comes when you look out the window at night. The Martian sky is incredibly clear because there is almost no water vapor to create haze. You can see thousands of stars burning like sharp points of ice in the blackness. And if you look closely near the horizon, you can spot a tiny, bright blue pixel shining just above the hills. That blue pixel is Earth. Every single person you have ever known, every city you have ever visited, every historic event, every piece of art, and every mediocre fast food meal is currently sitting on that tiny blue dot. From your perspective, the home planet looks no bigger than a speck of dust on a computer monitor. You can cover the entire history of the human race with the tip of your thumb. You realize that if your habitat suffers a catastrophic decompression right now, the people on that blue dot will not even find out about it until 24 minutes after you are already gone. They will be going to work stuck in traffic, complaining about the weather, or watching television while your frozen body is quietly turning into red dust on a foreign world. You are completely disconnected from the human narrative. You are a footnote that drifted away from the rest of the book. This realization completely changes your perspective on the things you used to hate back home. You find yourself genuinely missing the terrible things about modern life. You miss the sound of your neighbor's leaf blower, waking you up at 7 in the morning on a Saturday. You miss the excruciating experience of standing in a long line at the DMV, surrounded by unhappy strangers. You miss the absolute chaos of a crowded supermarket where everyone is bumping into your cart. On Earth, those things felt like a personal insult to your peace of mind. On Mars, you realize that those annoying moments are actually the beautiful, messy evidence of a living world. You would give anything to experience a minor inconvenience caused by another human being right now. You would gladly pay an exorbitant fee to a greedy landlord just to live in an apartment that has actual trees outside the window. So what about you? If you found yourself left behind on the red planet, would you be the resourceful survivalist who figures out how to clean the solar panels and wash the toxic salts out of the dirt? Or would you just spend your final 48-minute communication window sending increasingly unhinged reviews to NASA's feedback inbox? Let me know down in the comments below. Ultimately, your survival on Mars is not going to be decided by some grand, dramatic sacrifice or a brilliant scientific breakthrough. It is going to be decided by whether or not you have the mental discipline to get out of bed every morning, put on a heavy suit, and sweep the dust off a mirror while the universe watches you in complete silence. You sit down at the console one last time to check the status of your long-distance message. The green light finally stops blinking, signaling that your latest audio log has successfully completed its 48-minute round trip. You put on your headphones, expecting a detailed rescue plan from the finest minds at Mission Control. The audio file plays, and the chief flight director's voice comes through the static. He clears his throat, apologizes for the delay, and asks if you can check the expiration date on the emergency batteries in the storage closet, because they forgot to write it down in the master log. You look out the window at the endless orange desert, sigh quietly into your microphone, and promise to get back to them in about an hour.